Welcome to God with George Ortega. This is episode number 74. I'm recording it on Wednesday, February 3rd, I believe. Yes, at 2021 at 3:55 p.m. Eastern Time. And God apparently wants me to talk about the fact that in the present moment, God does not have a free will. Now, it's not like us. Like we don't have we never have a free will. Nothing that we ever do is up to us. We'll do more on that eventually because it's important to understanding God. But for this episode, it's the idea that, and this is like, it's surreal, but you can't escape it. This is logical. This isn't, speculation. Um, and before I get into that, like, it's not like that God never had a free will. Presumably, even though it evades or is outside of our logical ability to understand. In the infinite eternal past, God presumably decided, to create the world, to do whatever God did back then. But at the present moment, God does not have a free will, and it's because God is omniscient. So let's go through the reasoning of how we get there. Um, God does not have a free will in the present moment because God is omniscient. So we start off with what is, uncontestable. And incidentally, like some days God doesn't have me knowing what I'm going to say, but today, I was preparing for this a few hours ago, just thinking about it, whatever. And yes, it occurred to me that I was, um, the thoughts were coming to me. So, I just got out of the shower, just took a shower, and here we go. All right, what's uncontested? What's standard in Judaism, Christianity, Islam? God created the world. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, like, there's different ways of understanding that. One way is that the traditional way is that God created this planet Earth with all these, we and human beings and all these animals and plants and stuff. That's one way, because like back then, that's all they thought was, except for the heavens. I guess they had these, and I got to look into what their conceptions of the heavens were back then, because I think I want to understand that better. But anyway, that's the traditional conception. The more accurate modern conception, and because like we can apply both, and the reasoning works in both cases, so it doesn't really matter whether we accept the traditional or the modern scientific. But the modern scientific understanding is that God created the Big Bang. God set in motion the Big Bang that inflated into this universe over almost 14 billion years ago. So over the course of 14 billion years. So like with that more accurate understanding, I mean, like it's with that understanding, you have to posit, you have to speculate. It is seriously doubtful that we are the only life in the universe, the only intelligent life. I mean, like 2 to 3 trillion galaxies, each with 2 to 300 billion stars. So like the odds are very in favor. And like, there was some guy who said like, no, it was like the Drake equation. He said, no, the conditions, that gave rise to this life on this planet are so rare that that this some people concluded that there really isn't, that we're the only life. All right, there have been flaws with Drake's equation. He just didn't use the right. There too much speculation. Anyway, that's an aside. You can blame God for that. So, all right. So we're starting off with God created the world, which means again, the world as described in the Bible, and as we understood 3,000 years ago, or the world that started with the Big Bang. Now, think about this. This is like very important, not just to understanding why God doesn't have a free will, but to understanding why God is an absolute necessity. It's not a belief. God, she is not a belief or a hope or a faith. She is an understanding, and I'm using the pronoun she because we've been referring to he for too long, and that has like these aggressive, hateful connotations. So it'd be nice to kind of like shift over to a more nurturing kind of like conception of God, balance things out. So anyway, so think about it. Now, in the Bible, it makes it a little confusing because, like in the Bible, God is saying we created the world. And that's generally taken to mean that God created, I guess, some angels. But, I think the understanding throughout the Bible is that, well, the understanding, and again, I haven't delved into this, but I think in like the oral tradition, the Talmud, um, they probably, at some point posited that God created the angels. So if God and the angels, whatever, and we're going to get into a little kind of like a tangent into like what these angels are. But anyway, so like whether it's God, so like God created the angels, then the angels and God created the world. So that's, notwithstanding, before there were angels, it was just God. And all right, before I forget, angels, like for example, gravity could be an angel. The electromagnetism could be another angel. These things that we know as physical forces can be personified, to fit into our mythology, into our religion. We'll do some episodes on that, because that's an intriguing thought. So anyway, so like God is the only, now think about this. This is completely logical. This is not speculative. This is not, you know, a belief. God is all that existed before God created the world. So what does that tell you? That tells you in an instant that the only thing that existed from which to create the world was God. So think about it. If God created the world from herself, if God created the world from God, then this world is God. Everything is God. Every galaxy is God. Every planet, star, everything is God. Um, because if you start, with just God, and God creates a world, and there's nothing to create the world from but God, logical conclusion, God is the world. And God continues to be, well, yeah, God is the world. Okay. Um, so, and this just as an aside also, this conforms, Einstein's one of our, there's four top scientists in the world who are in a league of their own. Newton, Darwin, Freud, and Einstein. And Einstein's God was this God that I'm describing. Einstein equated God with the universe, held them as synonymous. Now, Einstein, I think, had a small flaw in his conception in that he didn't believe that God was conscious. Whereas my understanding is this world that God created is God's consciousness. God is completely, God has to be both conscious and intelligent, So anyway, so we have this God who created everything from God. Now think about this. Again, this is completely logical. It's not theoretical or speculative. If you are everything, and then you created this world from yourself, meaning that that world is also you, God, then does it make sense that God must know everything? If God is everything and God created everything, how could God not know everything? Sometimes in the Bible, God will feign like he doesn't know. Like he asked, I think Adam and Eve, what he asked Adam, like what were you doing? I don't know. He asked him some question, or he asked um, Cain, where is your brother Abel? As if he didn't know. So, all right, let me explain this. And I'm not sure we get to this main theme. We should. I've got 18 minutes. So, like, all right, the idea is like, for example, you got to see God as a parent. When God punishes us, God punishes us as a parent. When God talks to us, God talks to us as a parent talking to maybe a toddler. For example, let's say a parent walks into the room on a toddler who's been left alone for 15, 20 minutes, and all the toys are everywhere. You know, they were before they were like on the shelves, wherever the toys are, or whatever. But now they're everywhere. And the parent might ask the child, huh, do you know how these toys got everywhere? And parents do that. I mean, like, I don't think there's a parent who's never done that. So, like, naturally, the parent knows exactly what happened, right? But this is for the benefit of the child. So, like, when God in the Bible is portrayed as not knowing what it is that God is, seeming not to know, it's not that he doesn't know it. It's that for our benefit, he's feigning, not knowing, um, for the sake of the story. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, so again, God is omniscient. Now, oh yeah, we are going to get pretty soon to this free will connection thing. So, and those four great top scientists, they all, say that free will does not exist. All of them say that. Okay, and so like, all right, so because it's so important to understand that we don't have a free will, so we can understand that we're manifesting God's will, and that makes possible so much peace with ourselves and with others. And if Einstein had a quote about that. He said, like, I prefer to believe in that we don't have a free will because it makes sense, but also it just makes things, makes people not take themselves so seriously, and helped. I think Einstein said it helped them to not be angry with others. So, and that's exactly the reason, like when you understand we don't have a free will, you don't get angry. I'm segueing. So, all right, we left off with God being omniscient. Okay. And now, how does that all-knowing, knows everything, how does that then lead to our understanding that God, at the present moment, doesn't have a free will? Think about it. The moment before the Big Bang, the moment before God created the Big Bang, and you could go further into the past eternally on this, whatever. I just picked this as a starting point. God knew everything back then, so that means God knew all of the eternal past, and God knew all of the eternal future. So here's where the logical deduction arrives. If God in the past, before the Big Bang, knew everything about the future, God also knew everything that God would be doing in the future. You see that? That's inescapable. If God knows everything, God also knows what God is doing in the future. And so, like, now here's the thing. So, like, something that I don't think is speculative. If you created the world, you govern the world. You say what would happen. We didn't go through that, but, like, it's hard to create the world from yourself and not be in control of everything, because you're the only thing that exists. So that's like, so God is omnipotent, all powerful. So naturally, and so the thing is, like, part, I think, of being all knowing and all powerful is that God is infallible. You and I make mistakes all the time, but God doesn't make mistakes, because he would, if there was a mistake to be made, he would have known it before. Because we find out we make mistakes after doing things. Oh yeah, whatever. But God knows. So, like, God does not make mistakes. So a moment before the Big Bang, God knows what he's doing exactly this moment that you're watching this right now. God knows. God knew back then what God was doing now. God is locked into that self-knowledge. God is locked into this understanding that God had 14 billion years ago regarding what God would be doing at this very moment, which is so cool. So, all right, so I'm not saying that God doesn't have a free will categorically like we humans. I'm saying that God at the present moment doesn't have a free will because God knew billions of years ago what God would be doing now, and God is infallible, and so God is locked into his knowledge of what he's doing today. Um, there's another kind of like a surreal, and I don't, in my, when I relate to the God, I don't kind of like take this perspective, but it's logically inescapable. You can't really deny it. Let's see. All right. This, let me try to figure out how to explain this. All right. God, if we have a put together a row of dominoes, let's say 100, okay, and we want to set these dominoes in motion, just like, let's say, God put together everything that would be involved in the Big Bang and set the Big Bang in motion, right? So we have these dominoes, 100 of them lined up, each one lined up to topple the one in front of it. So you take your finger, you topple the first one in the chain, and the first one topples the second topples the third, third the fourth, and your job is done. The 100th domino will be toppled without your having to do anything else. Cause and effect. And this is the same way the world works, which it really is surreal. It's hard to wrap one's mind around, but you can't avoid it. Logically, it's inescapable. So God, and again, you have to have this caveat that since time is eternal, in a certain sense, we can never reach the time where God, let's say, set everything in motion, the laws of causality. We can't reach that point. But logically, theoretically, there is that aspect of reality. And we don't even have to take it to to the to the eternal past. If we just like consider our universe, 13.8 billion years old, started with this big bang, and it inflated into all these galaxies, into matter, space, the laws of nature, laws of physics. And one of the laws, the fundamental law of physics, of science, is causality, the law of cause and effect. Things do not just happen. Science investigates why things happen, what causes things to happen. And it's not just science. We do that in philosophy. We do that in logic. We do that in religion. Somebody does something. Why did they do that? What caused them to do that? Something happened. What caused it to happen? So again, causality is fundamental. So, so what I'm trying to say, and God is, I guess, slowly leading me to it, is that not only does God not have a free will in the present moment, but it's like, remember, like, the traditional Genesis story of God having created the world in 6 days and resting on the seventh, the Sabbath. Um, it's it's a little more of a Sabbath than that, because like as soon as God creates the world and sets it in motion, just like we would set a chain of dominoes in motion, God's job is done. God, like, logically, inescapably, really, set this world in motion and governed by this law of cause and effect. And God is the law of cause and effect, of course. So in that sense, actually, you can say that God is still making things happen. And God is kind of like, this is a cool thought that maybe we'll get to, is like God has to kind of like imagine the universe, the world, every moment, just keep it, in its imagination, in her imagination, because, I mean, that's a little bit speculative, and maybe I have to think about it to get a clear answer. But again, this world, this universe, this earth that follows the laws of physics, the laws of nature, again, the fundamental one of which is causality, um, runs like a clock. It doesn't require God to do anything, because again, everything is happening, everything is caused, like one moment of the universe is causing the next, that next is causing the next is causing the next, and through this chain of cause and effect into the future, um, we're, that's how our world evolves. That's how we progress from moment to moment, year to year, eon to eon. Um, Now, do I relate to God in that way? No, no, because I like to feel that I'm having a personal conversation with God. That God is, and like, naturally, I mean, this is God's conversation also. Every thought that I'm, thinking and then saying to God, it's because God has me. Again, that's what no free will means, that it's really everything, all is God's will. So, but like, and so I think the better way to explain this is God prefers that even though I know that God, really doesn't have to do anything, you know, I address God, for example, asking God to do things, asking God to end animal farms so we end that terrible suffering, asking God to end pandemics, to make people happier, more virtuous, to create a better world, you know, and it, it feels good to um, to sense God in the present. Now, yeah, so like, I mean, I'm not sure it'd even be possible to relate to God really, you know, completely through the understanding that that God is like God is like experiencing an eternal Sabbath after He created this world. God's not doing anything. I mean, you know, because well, actually, the answer to that actually is because no, no. All right, so I have to back up a bit. I made, I think, a bit of a mistake. It's not that God isn't doing anything now. It's like God wrote herself into the story, you know. So in other words, like, yes, God is in the present just like we are. I mean, again, everything is God, so we're God. So in that sense, God is always in the present also. But yeah, God wrote herself into the story. So that means that yes, we are interacting, truly, genuinely interacting with God moment by moment. And I mentioned this, I think, yesterday, where I suggested that, you look around, that's all God. Think any thought you're thinking, that's God. Feel any feeling, that's God. We perceive God. We cannot but perceive God. A lot of us don't realize that, but that's an inescapable reality. Um, so, all right, with about 5 minutes left to go, um, God has had me feel that I've covered the topic. And as I do, if you see my series, these on various things, I covered and covered again. I mean, 216 episodes of Exploring the Illusion of Free Will, my television series, premiering to the world, to the modern world. I mean, like the most well, yeah, the most extensive initiative ever in the history of mankind to get people to understand that no, we don't have a free will, everything is God's will. So yeah, I'm bragging now, whatever, but it's not really me, it's all God. But so anyway, so like God has me feeling now that I've explained this well enough. So in the next 4 minutes, I'm just like, I'm excited because like I used to like bake whole wheat bread years ago, years and years ago, and God recently had me, you know, think, why don't you start again? And I'd had that thought for several years now and all, but I just hadn't gotten to it. But finally, a few days ago, whatever, God has me go to ShopRite and get some whole wheat flour, and I had some yeast, and then like I had to learn to make the bread again because I don't remember the recipe. It might have been 15 years ago. I don't know. But so anyway, so like so it's, I let it rise for, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours. Then I kneaded it again, the dough, and now it's in these two bread tins. I thought that it was going to be three, but it turned out to be two, which is fine. Because, and so after I finish this episode, I'm gonna, And you get different, the internet's crazy about this. First of all, you try to get a simple bread recipe, and whoever puts it on there wants to give you their life story before they tell you anything. Sometimes there's a button that says go straight to recipe, but it's like I'm scrolling and scrolling, and it's, in the advertising. So anyway, what I'm trying to say, it's been really hard to find a simple bread recipe. How much yeast, how much sugar, how much water, how much flour, how much salt. That salt is optional, whatever. But um, and I think I put a little olive oil in it. Um, so anyway, so yeah. So now it's in the tins, and yes, as soon as I'm done, I you know I've read 325, I've read 400, then reduce it to 350. I'm gonna just have it at 350 and keep my eye on it. Like it should take about 40 minutes or so, I'm thinking. I don't know. And if I mess it up, it should be all right. But I'm excited because I love bread. I mean, a lot of times, yeah, bread is kind of like my, bagels. Um, there's this white bread that they don't sell it in the supermarkets. I don't know why, but it's really super soft. You get it in the Hispanic delis, and it's really, really delicious white bread. I don't know how they get it to be so soft and chewy and all, but really good. But anyway, so but I'm psyched. So what else? So Andy wasn't able to join us for this episode because we're still trying to get his, you know, now we've got some technical issues to deal with that, but hopefully he'll be with us sometime. I got a call. I don't know who it was. No. So yeah, so hopefully, Andy will be, but like I'm doing one more episode this week until Sunday, and I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet. God hasn't told me yet, and which is fine because God did have me make this nifty list of topics that, I can just call up and refer to, and it makes, because that way I don't have to worry, oh yes, let's talk about this. All right, so we're under a minute. Thanks for watching. Catch this series at 5 o'clock every Monday through Friday on White Plains Community Media, channel 76 if you get Optimum, and 45 if you get Verizon. And Verizon, if you live in Hartsdale or Scarsdale or Tuckahoe or Ardsley or Tarrytown, you can get this program if you have, Verizon there. I'm not sure. It's probably the same channel. I don't know. Anyway, and I upload all the episodes to YouTube, so you can find them there. And so, again, this is episode number 74, right? Or 73. Hold on. Episode 74. So, this is moving along. Let's see what gets talked about in episode 100 and 200 and all. All right, thanks for watching. See you, God willing, soon.